Welcome back. Today we're going to look at how perfect competition transitions from the short run into the long run. Last time we talked about how in the short run firms might operate at a loss if the price is above average variable cost. But only in the short run. What do they do in the long run, and how does that impact the market? Similarly, when firms are at a profit, how does that impact the market when other firms can enter or exit without cost? So we're going to look at what happens in that transition with the goal of being able to graph the long run adjustment that occurs when there's either a profit or a loss, and be able to explain why there is a transition from short run into long run and why firms behave the way they do. So we go back to looking at a graph for an individual firm within the overall market. And we remind ourselves that the marginal cost curve equals the supply curve from a previous lesson. So what will firms do if the price is $18? Well, if the price is $18, it's a reminder again, price equals marginal revenue. And in perfect competition, marginal revenue equals the demand curve for the individual firm. It's perfectly elastic because we're producing exactly the same good, and there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of firms producing that good. So if that's the case, then we would produce at a quantity of 5 because that's where marginal revenue, the demand curve, intersects the marginal cost curve, the supply curve. And that would be our optimal output. Now, if the price is $18, firms will choose to enter into this market because economic profit exists. How do I know? Because at a price of 18, that's the marginal revenue equals price equals demand. It's a horizontal line at 18. It intersects the marginal cost curve, which is also the supply curve. It intersects at a quantity of 5. At a quantity of 5, the price is greater than the average total cost. So I know there's a profit here. And we have to remind ourselves, what does profit tell us? Profit tells us that we are doing better in this industry than we would be if we were in another industry. And so firms that are in a market that has a profit are counterbalanced by firms in a different market that has a loss. Anytime there's a profit in one, there has to be a loss in the other. If I'm doing better than one option, that means the other option has to be doing worse than I am. And so if there's a profit here, let's say in the production of tomatoes, then there's probably a loss somewhere, and maybe it's in the production of corn. So firms in the corn industry have a choice: either continue to be operating at economic loss, getting less than they could have, which is economically irrational, or they can stop making corn and start making tomatoes in order to pursue that economic profit. So anytime there's an economic profit, firms will enter. When there's an economic loss, firms will exit the industry. The adjustment in the long run is similar regardless of whether you have a loss or a profit. But let's just take a look at each one of them. If there's an economic profit, as there is here, here's the firm, here's the market, there is an economic profit because price is greater than ATC. If there's a profit, then what will happen is firms will enter into the industry, causing the industry supply curve to shift to the right. As more competitors enter, there are more products being supplied. And when that happens, keep an eye on the graph on the left. You'll see what happens to the profit. As firms enter, you begin to see the market price drops and the profit disappears. And we can look at that again, and we'll try and slow it down here. As firms enter, the supply increases. It drives the price down. As more product is available, it becomes less scarce, and so the price comes down. And as the price comes down, for all firms in the market, the profit begins to disappear until we get to a profit of 0 or normal profit. They are making money. Remember, keep in mind with normal, it's not that you're not making money. You're making tons of money in accounting profit. You've got lots of accounting profit. It just means that you're not doing any better in this industry than in another. A similar adjustment occurs if there's an economic loss. Again, here we've got an economic loss. Why? Because the industry graph is creating a price that then is passed on to all the firms, and that price is less than ATC at the optimal quantity. So there's an economic loss. When there's an economic loss, firms will exit the industry. And as firms exit the industry, the supply curve shifts to the left. And as fewer goods are being produced, it becomes scarcer and scarcer. And so the price for all firms in the industry begins to go up, eliminating the loss. Again, we can look at it in a little bit slower speed. As firms exit, the price will rise for all firms. And as the price rises and begins to approach ATC, that loss gets smaller, smaller, smaller until we reach a point where price equals ATC and profit is normal. When there's normal profit, there's no incentive for firms to exit and there's no incentive for firms to enter. And so that adjustment process ends because we've now reached the long run. So the long run exists in perfect competition when economic profit equals zero, or when economic profit is normal. Firms are doing no better or worse in one industry than another at zero profit, and because there's no reason to enter or exit, the markets are said to have cleared, and we're in long run equilibrium until some sort of external shock occurs that causes a change in the industry, and that'll create either a profit or a loss, and that will generate some reshuffling. But until then, the market is sort of set into its long run equilibrium. One curveball that can be thrown at you and has been given in the AP exams in the past is to talk about the increasing or decreasing cost industry. So far, we have assumed what's known as a constant cost industry. That is where the number of firms does not affect average total cost. So when firms enter or exit, average total costs stay the same. This is the most common assumption for the AP exam, but it is not the only assumption that gets made. So you have to be careful when you read the question. There are some questions that may refer to what are known as an increasing cost industry or a decreasing cost industry. The increasing cost industry is one in which average total costs rise as firms enter. So as firms enter into an industry, there's more competition for inputs. That causes average total costs to rise across the entire industry. In a decreasing cost industry, ATC will go down or diminish as firms enter in. The reason why is because in a decreasing cost industry, more firms that enter allows the industry to take advantage of economies of scale. And so that would lower the average total costs as more firms enter, becoming more efficient. Regardless of whether it's a constant cost industry, increasing cost industry, or decreasing cost industry, we know that the long run industry supply curve will be more elastic in nature than the short run, because in the long run, firms are able to be more responsive to changes in price, more responsive to profit or loss, which, because they're more responsive, makes the supply curve more elastic in nature. When it comes to the long run adjustment, most questions in the AP exam have dealt with increasing cost industry. And so if you want to see what that looks like, then here's a video for you. You'll notice that as this industry adjusts to the long run, it's very similar to a constant cost industry. There's a profit here, and because there's a profit, firms will enter in, so the supply curve will shift to the right. And as it shifts to the right, you'll begin to see the price drop, just like in a constant cost industry. But you'll notice here near the end, as the price is dropping, that the average total cost curve will begin to rise, and at the same time price is dropping, and they'll find the intersection point where MC equals MR, but it'll be at a different point than the constant cost industry. We'll end up at a place in which the price is actually higher than constant cost industry would be because at average total costs are rising. So as we finish off perfect competition, a couple of conclusions or things to keep in mind. One, marginal cost is going to be the same for all firms because all firms are identical in nature. The marginal cost curve will also serve as the firm's supply curve. Price is set by the market and transferred to all firms because they're producing exactly identical items in exactly the identical way. And so price will equal marginal revenue, and that will equal demand, which is perfectly elastic for the firm. Firms in the long run will always earn normal profit. They can never do better than their next best alternative because there's free entry and exit into and out of the industry. And we also know that long-run equilibrium will be efficient, that when left alone, the market will get to a point at which consumer and producer surplus is maximized because we'll end up at a place where the industry supply and demand curves are intersecting and where there are no longer any mutually beneficial trades that are possible. We'll have exhausted all of them. And so long-run equilibrium will be efficient in perfect competition. Next time we'll look at monopoly and the special case that it presents, not only in graphing, but in long-run equilibrium.